Hi, Brother Nielsen. My name is Victoria Sorrentino, and I'm going to be presenting the case study number 12. So let me screen share with you so you can see my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so case study number 12. Just as an intro, Gary faces some decisions that require time value analysis. In order to decide how best to invest his company's excess $50,000 cash balance and plan ahead for a new patient billing software system, we're going to be using Excel to run the numbers and figure out what is the best course of action. So question number 1 was to consider the $50,000 in excess cash and assume that Gary invests the funds in a 1-year CD. What is the CD's value at maturity if it pays a 10% annual interest? So using Excel, there is a function called future value where we can find out exactly the balance that Gary would get. So by plugging in the present value of $50,000 in cash at an interest rate of 10% for 1 year, that balance would be $55,000 at maturity. And for the second part of the question, what will its future value be if the CD pays 5% interest or 15% interest? So just so you can see, these are the right answers, but Excel is a wonderful program because you don't have to repeat your work over and over again. So let's see if I can share another screen. Okay. So here I just copy and pasted my original formula, and you can just plug in the new interest rate. So originally it would have been 10% and we would have gotten the $55,000, but by changing this to 5%, we can see that at the lower interest rate, the maturity would have only come to $52,500. Or at the higher interest rate, we could get $57,500 over here. So that's just an easy way to do side-by-side comparisons using the future value function. And now going back to my other screen. Okay, so for question number 2, we're going to rework those same problems, but assuming that it has a 5-year maturity instead of just a 1 year. So here you can see how I worked this out on Excel, and it was the same exact way. I was able to copy and paste my previous functions and then change my end value. This is a really useful tool for any of us that are going to be making financial decisions and want to see if we're getting the best bang for our buck. And so this is an interesting way to see how those interest rates mature for a longer time period. So as you can see, at the interest rate of 10% for 5 years, it would mature to $80,525.50. At 5% interest rate, obviously we'd be making a little bit less money at $63,814.08. And at 15% interest for 5 years, it would mature to $100,567.86. So obviously that would be the best option. For question number 3, consider the surgery center's goal of having $200,000 available in 5 years to buy the new patient billing system. So the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what lump sum amount must be invested today in a CD paying 10% annual interest to accumulate the needed $200,000? So as you can see, a screenshot from my Excel program. If we want a future value of $200,000, we put that in first. We're solving for the present value, so we want to know how much money do we need to invest to get $200,000. So that's why I have this listed as future value. With the interest rate at 5% maturing in 5 years, because that's when we're going to need the new billing system, we would need to put in a lump sum of $124,184.26. Now, what annual interest rate is needed to produce $200,000 after 5 years if only $100,000 is invested? So I think this is interesting. So if we did this analysis, we're like, well, we don't have $124,000, and some change. What are our other options? I can come up with $100,000. That's what the problem tells us. And we have 5 years to make this $200,000 bottom line. So we would need an interest rate of a CD that would be willing to pay 14.87%. And so that, as you can see here, I use the rate function in Excel. So pretty straightforward and a good tool for us to use even in our everyday lives. So moving on to question 4. Now consider a second alternative for accumulating funds to buy the new billing system. Instead of a lump sum investment, assume that 5 annual payments of $32,000 are made at the end of each year. So what type of annuity is this? So obviously this is an ordinary annuity because it's the same amount of money that's being made at a consistent time frame. So that's exactly what an ordinary annuity is. So moving on to the next part, what is the present value of the annuity if the opportunity cost rate is 10% annually? Or if it's 10% compounded semi-annually. So if we look at this, it's asking for the present value. So we know we're going to be using the present value function. But instead of having what our future value amount is that we want, we're telling it that we have $32,000 to put in every year. So that kind of makes it easier too, because our payments are on a yearly schedule because everything has to match up in Excel in order to get the right answer. So we have an annual payment, an annual interest rate, and an annual periods that we're calculating here. So the present value of this annuity is $121,305.18. But if we wanted to compound it semi-annually, I will show you what I did in Excel to kind of tweak that to get the right answer. Okay, so if you see here, $32,000, still the same payment, same rate, right? We have all the same information, but the way we'd put it into Excel is a little bit differently. We would need to divide the payment in half because it's being twice a year instead of just once a year as the interest is compounding. So that has to be on a twice a year schedule as well, or else we won't get the right answer. The interest rate would need to be divided by 2 because it's happening twice a year. And then this just shows that the periods would be times 2 in order to get that same, so that everything's on the same schedule. Oh, whoops. And so the correct answer is $123,547.76. So going back to my presentation. What is the future value of this annuity if the payments are invested in an account that pays 10% interest annually and 10% compounded semi-annually? So what we want is kind of like the reverse. So this is what the present value is, what it would be worth today. But we want to know if we're actually going to reach that $200,000 mark so that we can pay for this program. So we're telling the Excel that the payment's $32,000, same rate, same number of periods, and if it's only the interest is compacted annually, then we would get $195,363.20. So we'd come up a little bit short. But if it was compacted semi-annually, using that same format as I told you before, so that everything's matching for the same periods, we would get $201,246.28. So that would help us hit the mark. So the way your interest is compounding can really affect the bottom line of how these things mature. So on the next part of question 4, what annual interest rate is required to accumulate the $200,000 needed to make the purchase, assuming a $32,000 annual payment? So let's say that we can't necessarily find one that is a compound semi-annual interest rate. So we know that we can make payments of $32,000, and we know we want $200,000, and that we have 5 years to do it. So in order for all of this to happen, and with an annual interest, we would need 11.18% in order to reach that bottom line. Now, what size annual payment would be needed to accumulate $200,000 under an annual compounding at 10% interest rate? So they're saying, well, if we can't find an interest rate at 11.18% to make back on our money, what payment do we need to make instead so that we can, like, let's say we can only find the 10%. How much more money do we need to put in to get the $200,000? So instead of $32,000 even, we would need $32,759.50 in order to reach our goal. So moving on to question 6. Now consider the uneven cash flow stream stemming from the lease agreement given in the case. What is the present value of the annual lease cash flows and the opportunity cost rate is 10% annually? So in this question, they're pretty much asking what the NPV is if we need to calculate this equation for present value. And so we would just plug in the numbers into Excel and use the NPV function. You would click in the rate and then the area that you wanted, the ratio that you wanted to calculate, so 1 through 5 years. And the NPV would be $47,320.61. Is what we would be getting. So does the office renovation and subsequent lease agreement appear to be a good investment for the company? Well, the cost of the renovation is $40,000, and the net present value of leasing it would be $47,329. So the office would come out over $7,000 ahead. So that would be a good investment. So for the last question, now assume that it is year 5. Now assume that it is 5 years later and that the company is unable to accumulate the $200,000 needed to make the software purchase. Instead, it is forced to borrow the funds at a 10% rate. The loan calls for the repayment of equal annual installments over a 4-year period, with the first payment due at the end of year 1. What amount of interest and principal will be repaid at the end of each year of the loan? So in this, we want to make an amortization table. So let me take you into my Excel. And I will show you how I did this. So I actually find these really interesting because all of us, well, most of us, have debt that it's kind of nice to see what you really signed on for when you're making decisions for loans. So here I kind of made like a key for my program to kind of take into account. I put the loan amount here, number of periods, the rate, and then, of course, I did a calculation, a function to figure out the payment. So that's important. And we're going to be paying on a yearly period, and so everything's in the same format. So here we have the beginning amount, what our payment is, and it breaks it down to interest and principal, and what our ending balance is. Now, remember, the ending balance is going to be just subtracted from the principal. Our interest is just what the bank keeps off of it. One problem that I always make with these amortization tables, and I'm making them quickly, is that I always want to subtract the payment amount from the ending balance, and that's not the way it works. You can only subtract the principal balance. So the ending balance gets put back at the beginning balance for the second year, and the same process continues. Now the interest rate, as you can see here, is calculated by the the beginning balance multiplied by the interest rate. So that's what the bank keeps. So that's why, as you are paying on a loan, your interest rate starts off really high and gets really low, and your principal starts off low and becomes higher. And that's the reason why, is because the ending balance is becoming smaller and it's being multiplied by the interest rate. So by year 1, the interest we'd be paying is $20,000 and the principal would be $43,094.16. And then the following year would be $15,690.58 with a principal of $47,403.58. And as you can see, year 3, $10,950.23 for the interest, and the principal would be $52,143.93. And you can see that we're getting pretty close. Our ending balance here is just over $50,000. So our last interest payment would be for year 4, the payback year would be $5,735.83 with a principal portion being $57,358.33. So you can see here I have the sum total. So even though we only borrowed a loan amount of $200,000, we ended up paying an extra $52,376.64 in interest, which is kind of a bummer. So these other methods of accumulating the money over time and then seems to be the better way to finance these things, because then we're actually making money instead of losing it and still getting what we want to purchase. So I thought that was interesting. So let me see. That is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email me back. I really appreciate your time and this opportunity to present this. I find the time value analysis questions not only really beneficial for business, but in my own personal life, between student loans and me not working as much because I'm in school. Debt has been a real thing in my family. Me and my husband are newly married, and so it's been stressful to balance all that and get the minimum amount of student loans and trying to pay for things in cash. And this amortization table has been a real way to run the numbers in our own lives and figure out the best decisions for our families. So I hope this presentation was helpful and accurate, and let me know if there's anything else I can do. I appreciate your time. Thanks, Brother Nielsen.